Hey, good morning. So, Karen, thank you very much for joining me for Care Conversations this morning. A little bit of background about Karen. So, started in international and personal banking,
Right.
but then has a complete change. Went to deputyship team at South Gloucestershire Council and is now with Bath and North East Somerset team lead for deputyship and care finance team. I mean, that's quite a leap, Karen.
Yes. So there were a few sort of steps along the way, really. I started off in international banking and then into personal banking and qualified as an associate of the Chartered Institute Bankers along the way. I think NatWest, who I started off with, were really good in that respect, in that they took on lots of young people, but were really keen to support people to get higher level qualifications. So, progressing through professional qualifications through a combination of day release and self-study. So that was really, really helpful for me. So as a person who didn't go to university, I was able to get a high level of standard qualification, which has been really helpful. So I worked for about 15 years or so in banking, and then did some carried on part-time when my children were small. I then did some family learning. And also became involved with a number of committees like after school clubs and preschools and things like that. And so actually, I think someone that you had on before was involved with the quartet. And I was able to support with some grant funding applications for those organisations through that. So that was really quite interesting when I saw her talking about that last time. And then from then, as my children got older, I thought, I'm not sure if I want to go back into the corporate world of banking again. And I explored different avenues about supporting people in education, and worked for Radstock College, who are now part of the Bath College network, and trained and gained a PGCE in lifelong learning, and worked mostly with 16 to 19-year-olds who had previously been at risk of falling out of education. Okay. And also with some families supporting parents with their numeracy skills to try and upskill so that they can support their children when they're going through primary school and then into secondary school. So it was a bit of a complete change, really, but still sort of mathsy and involved with numeracy and things like that. And then this opportunity came up at South Gloucester Council to move into deputyship. And I thought it was quite a good combination, actually. When you look at the role of a deputy, it's a combination of social care type skills and literacy and supporting people numeracy, as well as sort of the banking side of things, which legislation has actually helped me quite a lot, actually, in the role. So my sort of legal knowledge of banking and the finance world has really helped to sort of navigate the way through the tricky role of deputyship.
Well, that's really interesting, because I mean, banking is a bit of a law unto themselves.
Yes, exactly.
From this side.
Yeah, definitely. And you think what is sensible and a reasonable decision to be making on behalf of someone, to try and navigate that through the banking system, when each organisation seems to have its own rules and sometimes changes those rules each time you contact them.
Yeah.
It's sort of quite good to have that background knowledge, really, of what should be happening and what they can do.
I suppose it's knowing the language, isn't it? It's
that's
like everything.
Right.
It's knowing what words to say that's going to unlock that next step with them, isn't it? So that's interesting.
Yeah. So I thought I'd talk this morning a little bit about the Court of Protection and what they do, and then what our role as a local authority deputy is. Some of you might know that already, so forgive me if I'm telling you something you already know. The Court of Protection was established by the Mental Capacity Act in 2005, and it protects those people who lack capacity to make decisions for themselves about financial and legal affairs, and also about their health and welfare decisions they might need to make. So our role within the local authority is only to manage property and affairs, so financial related deputyship applications. We do have solicitors who work within the authority who might deal with any health and welfare decisions which might come up, because sometimes we get situations where Someone might be objecting to a place that they need to move to, or a decision needs to be made to move someone to a place of safety or put in place a particular package of care, which might need a health and welfare decision if those arrangements or someone to help make those decisions has not already been put in place. So the Court of Protection can make decisions for people as one-off decisions or as ongoing decisions. Our property and affairs applications tend to be ongoing orders that we have, so that once the order's been granted, we can continue to make financial decisions on behalf of someone. And that could involve how to pay their bills, how to make sure they've got personal spending money, they can take part in social activities, they've got clothing, washing machines, fridges, all sorts of random things crop up that we might be asked to get involved with as their financial deputy. So it's basically all the financial decisions that you might make for yourself, we're making on behalf of someone else who doesn't have mental capacity to do that for themselves. And as part of our role, we have to take into consideration the Mental Capacity Act and make sure that we involve the client in the decision-making process as much as possible. So we will engage with the client as much as we can to find out about them and what they like, what they dislike, where they live, how they like to live. And sometimes that could involve supporting them in doing something that we might not necessarily think ourselves is a good decision.
Yeah.
But just because we personally don't think that's a good decision doesn't mean that it's not a decision they should be able to make if they're able to make it. And as long as it's not dangerous and illegal, then you know, people have a right to choose as far as possible to be able to spend their money as they wish. So that's also part of our role. And we'll engage in that process with the client, as I said, and also their support teams that work around them. So support workers or staff in the homes where they might live or supported living environments. So we try to engage with as many people to help us make financial decisions as possible. So as I mentioned, there are two types of deputy, but we only get involved in the property and affairs, and we've got another legal team which will deal with any health and welfare decisions. And I might just explain actually the difference between when a deputy might be involved and when someone might have a lasting power of attorney in place. So really the authority of us acting as a deputy is the same as someone pretty much as acting under a lasting power of attorney. It's just a lasting power of attorney is put in place before someone loses capacity to make a decision about who they might want to act for them. So you or I or anyone else could put in place a lasting power of attorney now and say, I want my son to act for me. While we've still got capacity, we can make that decision. But sadly, once you go past that point of having mental capacity to be able to make the decision about who you would like to act for you, then we're looking at going down the deputyship process. And I always say to people that I'm sure, Heledd, you would agree that getting in place a lasting power of attorney is much more straightforward than getting in place a deputy.
Oh, definitely. You know, it really just makes a huge difference to you know, speed, and you know, when that crisis moment comes, you've got that piece of paper in reserve to you know, start using it, haven't you? Yeah,
definitely. The Court of Protection process, sadly, is a very lengthy one. In some respects, it needs to be a lengthy one because there are several steps that you need to go through to make sure that everyone involved and surrounding the client is aware that this legal document is going to be put in place, because it is very restrictive on the individual person. And so it needs to be, the court needs to be certain that it is the right decision to be made for the client. But there are, as some of you will be aware, very long delays in the court protection process. And like all of us, they're really stretched, they're really busy. There's a shortage on judges, I think, being able to make those decisions.
Absolutely. I think we've just had a court order for somebody where we're applied to be deputy for, and I think that we started the process, it'll be 2 years ago because it was in the first lockdown.
Yes, yeah, it is quite surprising really how long some of these cases take, even though the court will tell you that most of their orders are going through in about 16 weeks. We find that, you know, we're looking at a good 6 months to get a court order to be able to, you know, on a straightforward application.
Yeah.
And then it does take a long time after that to be able to investigate someone's financial situation and find out where their money is, which bank accounts they have, where they might have any investments or savings, and also to sort out utility bills and things like that if they're in their own home, to resolve those sorts of queries as well. So, you know, it's a very lengthy process. So definitely a lasting power of attorney, if you've got an opportunity to get one set up in advance, then it's much better to go down that route, and much quicker for all those concerned who need to start managing your finances, to be able to deal with, rather than the court of protection route.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's that planning versus crisis management, isn't it? And you know, and I think people just do not realise how long it takes for you know, this piece of paper to come through, and how very stuck you are without that piece of paper, because
That's
nobody will
right.
talk to you.
Yes, exactly. It's really difficult. I mean, there is a process to become someone's benefit appointee in between that, getting your court order. So a proposed deputy could apply to the Department for Work and Pensions to become someone's benefit appointee. But of course, that only means then that you would have authority to manage their benefit income, and you don't have authority to access anything else. So
Yeah.
as you say, organisations won't talk to you. GDPR is paramount in everyone's organisation. It's the top of everyone's mind, really, when they're thinking about what can I discuss with someone, what can I discuss with a third party. And that's absolutely right, that should be the case. But it's really difficult trying to navigate that round to try and support someone who's got no access to any of their money, and you know, they really need supporting. In a lot of cases, that sort of interim financial support will fall back with the local authority, adult social care teams, and there's quite a strain on their budgets trying to be able to support people financially who should be really paying their own way to a degree. So, you know, should be able to pay to get their own groceries, or should be able to pay their own electricity bill so that their electricity is not cut off. And the local authorities often finding it's having to step in to protect those people, as it quite rightly should. You know, there does need to be a provision for people in this situation, and they shouldn't be just left destitute. But it is a big drain on local authority resources to be able to support people in that
at this
situation.
point, can I ask how you get involved as a local authority, as a deputy? Why might it be the local, you know, because I'm in private practice, I know, so we do it as solicitors, people obviously do it as family members. Why would it come to you as a local authority?
Yeah, so our first contact is with a social worker who has identified that someone lacks mental capacity to manage their own finances. And that could come through a number of different routes, really. You could have someone who's been sort of ticking along quite nicely in a care home, and suddenly the care home says they haven't paid their bills, they're not paying their contribution towards their care costs in the home. They're struggling to go out to get their own personal monies. So we get them sort of from that side of things, from the care home identifying that someone has got a capacity issue. And then we also get them case identified to us through individuals living in the community who might have a care and support need, or have been into hospital and then come home and it's identified that they have a care and support need. And then it does often take a number of weeks. So people are quite adamant, you know, I can do this for myself, I can manage myself. And then, you know, we get support workers saying, oh, we've noticed lots of red bills here, they're not able to get out to get their food shopping. And so we would get usually a referral in from a social worker at that point to say, we think this person might need somebody appointed to manage their own finances. what do you want us to do next? So the first port of call really would be a capacity assessment to make sure that someone is assessed as lacking mental capacity to manage their own finances. So that's the first thing that needs to be done from the social work side of things. Okay. We also ask them to investigate and make inquiries about any family member, long-standing friend, relative, partner, anyone of that nature, or previous involvement with a solicitor, if they've had quite a close involvement with a solicitor, because the local authority should always be the deputy of last resort, really.
I was going to ask,
yeah.
is that where you see yourselves?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. We see ourselves as the deputy of last resort. If there's absolutely no one else who can get involved to support the person. What we're going through at the moment is a bit of we get a lot of families who say, no, I don't want to help my family member. And we say, well, it's not necessarily the responsibility of the local authority to take these on. Sometimes it's because people are scared of the forms, and I absolutely understand that, because there are, numerous forms to fill out. They look quite complex when you first get them. You've got 4 or 5 forms to fill out. They look quite complicated, but actually, if you can get someone to talk through them with you who's a bit more familiar with it, then they're not quite as bad as they seem. And it is a sort of filling out the forms and then following the steps, although sometimes the court steps, the way that they inform you, is not that straightforward of what you need to do. That in itself is quite complex,
miss, isn't it?
Yes. So we always try to sort of not push families into doing things that they are not able to do, or are really, really adamant that they don't want to do it. But we do sometimes offer support to family members who do want to try, and so can support and give a little bit of guidance about filling out the form. We can't give legal advice because we're not allowed to do that, but we can say, okay, in this box you need to put something about what do you want to do, or what do you want to manage, what do you know about your family member already, what do you know about their finances. And so we can sort of tell people and guide people, this is the sort of information that needs to go in these boxes. Our other avenue of referral is through safeguarding. And so sadly, sometimes those family members or people involved with the client who you might think would be a suitable person to act and manage their finances are not the best person to manage their finances. And it never really ceases to surprise me, the number of different schemes and scams and financial abuses that we come across. You sort of think you've seen everything, and then something else crops up that you think, gosh, I would never have thought of that myself. I don't know how people
hard then, isn't it?
And those are really quite tricky, because we're then navigating difficult family situations where we might have a conflict with the local authority, where a family member is saying, no, I'm going to do that, and we're saying, actually, but there's a massive concern here about what's happened to all this person's money. The police might be involved, in cases like that. So we have quite large, sometimes multidisciplinary safeguarding meetings involving lots of people from different partners like the police, the local authority, social work teams. We might have some legal advice, advocacy in there as well. So we have some quite involved meetings at times about those cases, but ultimately often court of protection deputyship is the best way forward for those people.
And I think the interesting thing for me, I know sort of former senior judge Denzel Lush caused a bit of controversy a few years ago, didn't he, about his comments about LPAs and court of protection. For those who sort of don't recall this, it was like, actually, I don't have an LPA because I'd rather go to the court because I think there's more oversight. and I heard him speak at conference, I think it was Action on Elder Abuse as they were then, Hourglass as they are now, and he was quite passionate about it. He said, I've appeared to have landed myself in quite hot water with this comment.
Yes, he did actually. Yeah, he did. Yeah, we've also seen some cases of that. When I worked at South Gloucestershire Council, we had a lady who was lasting power of attorney for her father, sold his house, moved him to live close to where she was in a care home, started off by paying his residential care bills. He was self-funding, so that meant he was fully liable to pay all of his own costs. Started off, paid his costs for about 5 months, and then didn't pay anymore. And it ended up coming into the local authority to take over as a local authority deputy, but by which time she'd spent all of his money. The police were involved. It did come to press, actually. That one came to court, which actually is quite unusual for the police to be able to gain a prosecution and be successful. Often because there's a sort of blurred time frame between when someone lacks capacity and when somebody might have had capacity, and the usually perpetrator will say, well, actually my mum or dad said I could do that.
And it's that go back to that unwise, you might not be a very sensible idea, but if you've got capacity, you can do it.
Yes, yeah. So I think in this case, the fact that there had been a mental capacity assessment which determined that the gentleman did lack capacity, and then his daughter had continued to act in that way and sold his house and spent his money, which was clearly, the Office of the Public Guardian determined that clearly she had acted outside of her authority under the lasting power of attorney, and she was successfully prosecuted, that lady.
And I wonder though, with those is, you got prosecution and you got proceeds of crime and repatriation, but does the money ever, come back? I mean,
exactly, there was no money left. She had spent it all, and even the police officer that was involved said, I'm astounded as to where the money's actually gone, because there was no clear audit trail of how the money had been spent. So, but it was all gone, so sadly.
Yes. Yeah.
But the good thing was that the client was able to stay in the home that he had got used to, and as a local authority deputy, we took over. We're then able to manage what income he did have coming in moving forward, to support him in a better way.
So and it is that point, isn't it? Where you just have to do the right thing at that point, don't you?
Yeah. So I mentioned the Office of the Public Guardian there. We are overseen by them, and they will come and audit our cases, as they do with all deputies, lay deputies and professional deputies. Come and visit our clients, pick random clients to go and visit and conduct reports on those. And also every couple of years or so, we'll come into our office and look at what we're doing, where the files are, how we manage things, how secure are our systems, what training plans we have in place for our staff. And we'll write a report which hopefully will be favourable and mean that we can remain carrying on with our role as local authority deputy. So yeah, without the service, although it's not a statutory service for the local authority to manage, with most local authorities do have it, although it's really not well known outside of probably your area, Heledd, and also outside of local authorities, and even lots of people within the local authority don't realise that we do run this this service, really.
And is that simply because it's not because you are of last resort, or is it because people don't stop and think that other people might not be able to manage their own finances?
Yeah, I think it's because we are a deputy of last resort. We also don't want to sort of publicly advertise it, because we are a small team, so we don't have the resource to manage huge numbers of cases. We've currently got around 130 cases, and we've got a team of 4, including me. So it's a lot of cases. And we, I don't think we could take on any more really without taking on more staff. And obviously that costs quite a lot of money to take on another person. And although we are remunerated by the court for the work that we do, it actually doesn't cover the costs of our service. It just contributes to sort of towards the running costs. So the Court of Protection lays down fixed fees that we're allowed to charge for our work. And, it's a small contribution towards the work that we do.
Yes, and you're effectively therefore running the lives of 130 people, and we all know how hard it is to run your own life. So
yes, yeah.
So when you think about that, you think, my goodness, and all the complexities that come with that, and do you get to meet your sort of clients very often, or do you just do the sort of annual meetings? How would you sort of go about it?
We do meet some clients more often than others. The clients that live in the community, we tend to have a lot more involvement with, purely because they are out and about. They're sort of they're living a different life to someone who might be in a care home. So people in care homes tend to live sort of more frugally. They're not out and about so much. They're not as demanding on us as a deputy as someone who lives in the community, who we need to manage their utility bills. We're looking at their rent, their housing benefit if they're in receipt of that, sorting out their, like I said before, their washing machine's broken, or they need a plumber because they've got a leak. So it's all the sort of funding for all those sorts of things that are going on in someone's everyday life. So we tend to meet those more often. We do meet all of our clients at least once a year. But we do try to do that a bit more often. And throughout COVID, we've had to try and adapt some different ways of meeting people. So all of the care homes have been provided with iPads and laptops and things like that to be able to keep people in touch with their relatives and friends. And so we tried to do some visits virtually, which some have worked quite well. Some of the clients sadly aren't able to engage very much, but at least it means that we can see, we can ask the support staff to take a picture around their room. We can see, if they need any more clothing, or if their room's looking a bit bare, can we not get some new curtains in there, and get some, things like that.
I think, and it's that innovation we've all had to sort of get to grips with, isn't it?
Yes.
And I say, obviously, so your sort of care home residents are some of the most vulnerable. And we know that sort of people, the lockdowns, and the requirements of staff, and it has been very isolating for people, and as you say, anything you can do to sort of improve that has to be a good thing.
Yes, it has been difficult for people in care homes over the last 2 years. With opening up, closing. So we just think, we'll go out and do some visits and go and see people, and then we get told, oh no, you can't come in again. And we've got all the testing requirements still ongoing to go and visit homes. But obviously that would be expected, and we would expect our teams to be compliant with all of that before we go in to see anyone, because we wouldn't want to put anyone at risk. So our clients in the community, we've seen quite a lot more. Initially, we had that sort of 6-week phase at the start of COVID where we thought, right, we'll load everyone with money, we'll make sure everyone's got things, and then 6 weeks time, we'll sort all that out again. And it obviously went on for much longer than we thought. So we've had to be quite innovative over the last 2 years in trying to put in place ways to get money to people, ways to get them supported with getting their groceries, and all those sorts of things. It's been quite a challenge over the last 2 years. So hopefully coming out the other side now.
I know. I mean, we all struggled, didn't we? I mean, and those, as you say, those people who, because of lack of capacity, may not have understood what was going on, might have found it very distressing.
Yes, we've also found actually we've had quite a lot more referrals from social work teams for people who were in the community, purely because that sort of social support network wasn't there. The informal social support network that wasn't there during COVID. Where people were locked down in their own homes, not allowed to socialise or not allowed to go out. There were quite a few cases that have come to us where neighbours were supporting, or sort of informal arrangements were in place where somebody would pop in and go and see someone and make sure they were okay, or help them out a bit with going to the post office to get their pension. and all that sort of thing stopped. And so we found, that there were quite a number of cases that have come out of that, where people were clearly struggling, but hiding that really, and hiding it very well.
Okay.
But when that informal support network has not been available, that has caused them a problem. So that's been not interesting. It's surprising. I think our team only is managing the tip of the iceberg, and there are a lot of informal arrangements going on.
Yeah.
And most of those will be very good informal arrangements, and they're all above board, and no one's acting inappropriately or misappropriating anyone's money. But that person who's, with all good intentions, acting informally actually doesn't have any legal authority to do that.
And that's hard, isn't it? Because I think we're sitting here doing, as professionals doing this, we know what standards are required of us, and it sort of makes you slightly twitch, doesn't it, when you sit there?
Yes.
But you have to be realistic and say, this is working, and if everybody's fine, and because we also tend to be, as you say, the ones we see it when it goes wrong.
Yes. Yes.
But there are so many people out there, sort of, as you say, under the radar, just getting that informal support.
Yeah.
Did you see people move? So have you had many people move from the community into care homes, or have you managed to keep them?
No, we haven't. We have managed to keep them, those people that, it's suitable for them to stay at home. We haven't really had many people, I can't think of any actually, that have moved from either their own homes or to supported living environments throughout this period. And they have been able to be sustained in their own homes. I mean, support staff and carers have been amazing, still being able to go in, and they've all been doing huge amounts of extra work to try and support people. We as deputies have had to find different ways to work, and we've had to work mostly at home, and all of our systems are not necessarily available at home. We didn't have online banking. Still don't have online banking, which is very difficult for us to manage. And we've only recently had a prepaid card system in place, which means we can put people's personal money onto a prepaid card. So we've had to do quite a lot of cash handling as well in the past. And so our life is now made much easier by that. But
prepaid cards, what a lifesaver.
They are great. Absolutely. So we've had some good things in that respect. We found different ways of working and different technical solutions to managing deputyships, which have been good, and we're going to keep those moving forward. But it has been difficult over the last 2 years for people to be able to manage, in their own homes, and to keep them safe, really, and secure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, something I'm always quite sort of curious about, if you like, with sort of local authority deputyships. It is how you manage your role as deputies with your requirements under the Care Act, because there's obviously two real strands, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
They are so supportive.
Yes. So
how does that work?
we work. Our team sits within adult finance, adult social care finance, and welfare benefits. So it's separate from adult social care teams, but we do work very closely with adult social care teams. And so although our role is purely financial deputy, we do pick up on a lot of social care aspects, purely because we often have a lot more input with the person on a daily basis. And so changes in care needs and care and support needs, we would always feed back to adult social care teams. We've got good links with them, and it's trying to get that clear boundary between what is a Care Act need and what is a deputyship role. They do blur sometimes,
I can imagine.
And it's trying to set those boundaries as to what is our responsibility and what we should be involved in and what we shouldn't be involved in. So that's quite difficult sometimes, to define that clearly, and also to try and engage with social work teams to to get them to do what they're supposed to do. And I'm not saying that that's because they don't want to do it, but they are also very stretched. Social care teams are very stretched.
Yes.
So it's trying to get that clear definition of, no, this is not our responsibility. You need to do something about that. But identifying that a lot as well. So I don't know if I've answered your question really. It's clear. Anything that's care and support need related, we will ask adult social care worker teams to get involved in, because that's not our role. Although it does overlap. Because often we're the first people that become aware of something that's happening in someone's life.
That makes sense. So you like us, you would speak to your colleagues and go, can you please do your bit?
Exactly.
Of the jigsaw?
Yes. Yeah. So we're also very closely involved with the financial assessment team, who are the team of people that determine how much someone needs to pay for any care and support that they have. But again, as a local authority deputy, although we work for the local authority, our client is our client, not the local authority. So we also have to have that boundary between ourselves, and we do disagree sometimes with financial assessments that are carried out.
And my next question was going to be about conflict.
Yeah, so it's again, it's a bit like when you work in investments or in the stock exchange. You have to have those sort of walls between you, in that this is my responsibility, that's your responsibility, and although we will share information, the roles are clearly defined, and our responsibility is to our client. And we also have that sometimes with housing associations locally. I've got a case at the moment where our client has gone into a care home.
Okay.
We have a deputy order which gives us authority to end the tenancy. She is the sole tenant. She is the named tenant on the agreement, but her son has lived there for a number of years. But it's not suitable for him to remain there. The housing association want us to end the tenancy and move him out, although that's not our role to move him out.
No.
He's got his own social worker involvement. But we said, no, we won't end the tenancy because we think our client would want her son to stay there until he's suitably housed. So we've got those sort of boundaries that actually there's no money being paid to the housing association now, because the housing benefit entitlement has ended because our client's in a home. So they're out of pocket, but her son is not suitably housed yet. And so we will not cause him to be evicted by serving notice on the tenancy. And we've checked that out with our legal team. It's a bit, it is quite an ambiguous grey area, but as a duty to our client, we believe that's what she would want, him to be suitably housed. So we're not doing that until he's suitably housed. So we have those sort of conflicts that go on sometimes, and challenges about financial assessments and how much we think should be taken into account in the financial assessment. So it's our role to check that as well. But although we work for the local authority and we know how different systems work and how things should be done, we also have that duty to our client to be independent and to do the best for them financially, rather than think, oh, I'll just pay off that care debt because that's a local authority sorted.
Yeah.
So if we have a client who's got a number of debts, we will pro rata those. If the client's only got a limited asset value, we will treat it and try to negotiate with the creditors, so that we'll gain the total debt value and work out how much in the pound the client could afford to pay to each of those creditors, with a view to getting the rest written off. We wouldn't be able to favour one creditor above another, other than HMRC purely, obviously, because DWP and HMRC will always take a top priority.
Yes, yeah, because I often think, as you say, when sort of what people are left with are allowed to be left with weekly. It's like this
Yes.
£24, you think really is not going to get you very far, is it?
No, and once someone's moved into a care home, if they don't have any capital, really those creditors are not going to be repaid, because as you just said, £24.90 is all that someone's left with from their income once they move into a care home. So that's supposed to meet their toiletries, their hairdressing, any additional chiropody they might want.
Yeah.
Clothing, it's a very, menial amount really that someone's left with at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's got to be, so it's one of the things, as you say, it's again, it's that best interest, isn't it, for the individual?
Yes. Yeah.
What is that best interest? And yes, your colleagues may not agree with you, but that's where you're at.
Absolutely. Yeah. So best interest is at the heart of everything, really. Making sure we're doing the right thing for the client in the best way. And if the client's not able to speak for themselves and they need an advocate, then an advocate could be appointed if they don't have anyone else. Mm-hmm. And getting those professionals to agree what's in the client's best interest, really, as well, because everyone's going to have a different role to play in that. So it's about what is best, what's it, gathering everyone's opinion and then making the decision about what is best.
What do you say your biggest challenge is being a deputy?
It's gaining access to the client's finances, all the information that we might need. So often we'll get a referral from a social work team that doesn't have anything on it at all, really, about where their money is. And we can't make an application to the Court of Protection without having that, because they'll simply come back to us. We call it a fishing exercise. The court will give us an order which says, this order tells you must contact all the financial organisations that you can think of and find out if this person's got any money anywhere, and then come back to us. So by not getting that information at the outset, that really simply delays the court process a little bit more. And that it really doesn't need to be delayed a little bit more.
Really doesn't, does it? No.
So we will go, if we can, if the client's property is empty, we will go and try and have a look to see if we can find any financial information there, or if they've got someone who's previously been supporting them. What does that person know already about their financial situation? Where might they bank? Where are their bank statements? How much money do we think they have? So that's at the outset. And then another challenge when we actually get our court order is then contacting the banks and trying to navigate through the different financial situations or processes that the banks have, to try and get them to tell us what money the client has, and if it's appropriate to close those bank accounts down and amalgamate them into a new account that we might open for the client. So part of our process is to, when we get our court order, to open a new account which comes under the local authority corporate banking arrangements for that person. So we have a corporate banking arrangement. So although the bank accounts are individual to each client, we as an authority have an arrangement with the bank that they will open a deputy bank account for us. So each account is individual. It's really important that we keep people's money separate from any of the council money and separate from any of the other clients that we manage, so that it's very clear and transparent where their income and expenditure is, and it's visible for anybody who might want to come and see it, particularly the Office of the Public Guardian. And quite often we find out that sadly, after someone's passed away, we will get challenged by all sorts of people who come out of the woodwork saying, what have you done with my mum's money or my dad's money or my great auntie's money? So we need to be very transparent, very clear and accurate in all of our record keeping and decision making. What have we done? What's happened? Why did we do it? And be able to account for all of the income and expenditure that we've got. So challenges sort of ahead that we've been thinking about really are online banking and online access. We're finding more and more companies will only deal with you online. And so we trying to navigate that those websites and having different email addresses and passwords for each access point is something we've had to come up with a process, a standardized process that we'll have for each client, so that we all know how we can get into different pension records and things like that. And navigating through bank systems is hard. But we're sort of thinking for the future, it's going to be really difficult if people don't have paper statements, don't have passbooks, don't have any letters or forms which show you where their money might be, because if they've all done it online, it's going to be really tricky for us to try and find out where that person's money might be when they don't have capacity and they've got no one else who knows much about them. So if you know that they worked in a particular company, you can try and find out where they might have had a pension. But if no one's available to give you that information and the client's not able to tell you themselves, it's going to be quite tricky, really, to navigate that minefield as we move forward, really.
Exactly, and then you're throwing cryptocurrency on top of that.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be extremely challenging, isn't
it?
So
really,
again,
really challenging.
It's back to this kind of like, it's about getting your affairs in order if you can, because the risk is, if you are relying on somebody to come in and look after your finances down the line, money may just not be found, and that will have an impact on quality of life, won't it?
Absolutely, yeah, because I think our we have a designated officer who works as senior officer within the council, who is our designated deputy. But my team, we do all the work, really. So he's designated that authority to us, but ultimately he's the backstop with the court if something goes wrong or there's a challenge, that happens. But his view is, if the person's got money, let's spend it, enhance their life, let them do as much as they can. If we can facilitate that, whether they're in a care home and they need some extra equipment that they wouldn't normally have available to them, but it would really make things better for them, spend their money, let them have it. It's not a case of us as deputy ring fencing all their money, or no, they can't have that. If they can have it and they can afford it and it's going to enhance things for them, let spend their money on their behalf. And obviously everyone agrees that it's a good decision to spend that. We wouldn't be spending on something that was inappropriate or others didn't feel was a good idea to spend their money on.
Yeah, and that's right, isn't it? Because it's making that person's best life for them, isn't it? When you are making that decision for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I haven't mentioned is that we do identify, I will screen cases when they come to us. So if it's apparent very early on that someone does have considerable assets, property, we will ask the court to appoint someone from their panel list as a deputy. And the panel list is a list of pre-agreed solicitors who have agreed with the Court of Protection that they will take deputyship cases if necessary, that where a deputy is needed, but the person hasn't approached, or no one's approached a solicitor independently. So we will make the application and ask the court to appoint a panel deputy from their list.
And is that because of the property aspect particularly?
Yeah, it's a combination, really. We don't really have the expertise to be able to manage large financial portfolios, although we could engage someone separately from that to do that for them if we identify that later on. And also we've come across quite a number of complex situations with properties and selling properties, and also potentially being accused of a conflict of interest if we decided as a deputy to sell someone's property to fund their care placement rather than enter into a deferred payment arrangement with the local authority.
Right, okay.
I see that as quite a potential conflict, really. Who are we best placed to make a decision about whether someone's property should be rented out and entered into a deferred payment agreement, or should we sell the property and fund their placement from that?
And that has to be hard, doesn't it? Because of, as you say, I mean, where the money has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
And we all know that local authorities are strapped, and so
Yeah,
when that money's there, that there is that tension, isn't
that's
there?
right. And I think it's best not to put us as a local authority deputy in that position where there is that potential conflict, or later down the line, you know, like I say, after someone's maybe passed away, a family member or someone who would deal with the estate might come forward and say, well, why did you do that? This would have been much better if you'd have maintained that property, and we would sell it at a later date because it's potentially gone up in value.
It's interesting though, isn't it? They're not interested in looking after that person when
Yeah,
they're alive, but
yeah, yeah, that, you know, and those do come forward. We haven't had so many recently, but we have had in the past, and so I think it's about trying to stop that potential, you know, conflict arising. And also, if someone does have larger asset value, it does, if we allow or ask the court to appoint someone from the panel list to manage those cases, then it frees us up to be able to deal with those clients who are more vulnerable, don't have high asset level, and really, you know, a solicitor really wouldn't, I wouldn't say wouldn't want to pick those ones up, but if there's a different way that those clients could be managed, it does free up solicitors as well to be able to deal with different cases.
I think, you know, we're all trying to do our very best for people, and it's about getting the right advice for individuals, isn't it? And you know, what works for them and what works for the purpose, as you say, you're managing the lives of 100 and sort of over 113, I think you said.
We've got 130 cases.
130 cases, you know, that's 130 lives you're looking after.
Yeah, we've probably got about 110 sort of stable cases, and we've got about 20 running through court at different stages at the moment. And we always get these little, you get a flurry of activity at the start when we've got our application in. And then you get your first notice, which will come through about 6 weeks' time, and then everything goes quiet. And then sort of hopefully 3 or 4 months later, you'll get your court order, and then we have a huge amount of work to do then.
It is a huge amount of work.
Get everything organised.
Absolutely. So, gosh, I mean, you really do have your hands full, don't you?
Do, and it's difficult trying to get the right sort of staff, really, who've got the right sort of skill set to work, because it's not an accounting job. So you don't want someone who's purely thinking, oh, I'm going to be managing numbers, because it does have quite a high people involvement, but it's equally not a social work role, because you do have to have that quite high level of numeracy skill, really. So it's quite a
banking's perfect
balance. Yeah, banking's perfect. So it does stand me in good stead. So it wasn't wasted all those years ago when I started off.
And I think that it is that, isn't it? And you know, because it is so much, you learn so much, don't you, about this person and budgeting and their needs and their wants and what's in their best interest. And yes, it's not just balancing the books.
No, and they're all different as well. So although we've got processes of what we will do, no case is ever the same, because they're all different, they're all individual, they've all had different previous lives, different likes, dislikes, and their new, you know, their life moving forward is all they're all different to each other. So we've sort of got an outline process of how we manage things, and then things flick in and out all over the place to you know, to manage these on an individual basis, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Has anybody got anything they want to ask Karen, you know, before we sort of wrap this up, or anything, Karen, you haven't said that you'd like to sort of,
I don't think so. I think I've covered quite a lot, actually.
You have covered an awful lot.
Sorry if I've waffled on a little bit.
Not at all. It's really interesting, and I think, you know, it is understanding the nitty gritty on the ground. It is really so much
actually one thing which is really helpful is I do have quite a few really helpful contacts in private practice, so like yourself, and a couple of others. Holly, I don't know if she's here today, but and a couple of the other panel deputies locally are really helpful in giving me guidance on, we've got this, what do I need to do to get the court to do that, and telling me, you know, things that crop up out of the unusual that you might have come across and I haven't. So
And I think we're all for sharing, and I think that's very much part of the job. Lynn wants to get stuck in. Hello, Lynn.
Hi, Heledd. Sorry, no camera. I've got a bit of buffering today, so the internet connection isn't very good. Karen, very interesting. It's been really good. Could I just ask the difference between an appointeeship and a deputyship? Do you make the decision on that? Does the DWP do that, or where is the dividing line on that?
Yeah, so the Department for Work and Pensions are always the people who will decide who will become someone's benefit appointee.
Right.
However, if we've got a Court of Protection deputy auditor, that will trump any previous appointee. So as part of our role as becoming deputy, we will ask the Department for Work and Pensions to make us benefit appointee. But if there is a previous appointee in place who won't relinquish their appointeeship, we often come across there a little bit of a sticky patch, in that we would have to explain to the DWP why we want to become appointee and why we want that person removed. If there's safeguarding, although we can't share all the safeguarding information, we can share a limited amount with the DWP, which says actually this person is not acting in the client's best interest. While we're making our deputyship application, we'd like you to make us appointee so that we can take that responsibility over. So it is part of our process as becoming deputy. If someone is solely a benefit appointee, the difficulties that might arise is that you can only manage their benefit or state pension.
Yes.
You can't deal with any other income or bank accounts that they might have, and that's where the sort of difficulty lies, really.
Because quite often there aren't any funds, so the deputyship is going to be a lot more expensive than appointeeship, and when it's benefit level only, is it not? Does the DWP make the decision then to keep an appointeeship and not turn it into a deputyship, or is that something that you would apply to be a deputy from the local authority?
Us as local authority, we've taken the decision as a local authority that we will only act as deputy.
Got you.
We won't become benefit appointee only, and there are a number of reasons for that. Primarily, they are that often we did used to manage appointee only in the past, and we found that often other things came out of the woodwork that as appointee we couldn't manage. So we found that actually someone did have some private income, or they had another bank account.
Yes, you can't,
and we can't. We can't support the person with managing that. So that's why we've taken that decision. And although there are costs and fees associated with deputyship, we wouldn't take our local authority fee if the client absolutely couldn't afford it, and we wouldn't put them into some financial hardship purely to take our fee. And also at the making the application, there is an application fee, but clients on certain asset income levels or benefits are exempt from the fee. So there are ways to sort of get around that, really, if someone is on a lower income or doesn't have any assets.
Yeah, so you would prefer the deputyship because it gives you more powers, and if something comes out of the woodwork, you're equipped to deal with it because you've got the right legal instrument in place.
Yes. And we even find things like, utility companies won't talk to you without the person being present, and phone companies won't talk to you. And then sometimes we get the other thing which crops up, which is a new tenancy. The person might need a new tenancy.
Right.
The Court of Protection used to give us a standard property and affairs deputy order authority to enter into or end someone's tenancy. They don't do that now, and it means applying for a separate order. But if we are deputy already, at least we're aware that that might happen. And so we can sort of try to make an application in a timely way to get deputy authority to end or enter into someone's tenancy if that's necessary at some point in the future.
Lovely, thank you. You explained it really well. Thanks very much.
And a bit of a left field one from Fiona. What role do you see for your department with the arrival of Ukrainian refugees, if any? So that might be quite long or quite short.
Yeah, so actually within deputyship, unless we have, or we come across people who are in need of care and support and lack mental capacity, then we wouldn't be involved. Although I do work within the sort of wider welfare benefits team, and I am aware that local authorities have been asked to get involved in several local government schemes to make payments to refugees that are coming here. So I know that there are things going on at the moment with the wider team that I work in to put in place some payment mechanisms to get money out to people who are coming to the Bath and North East Somerset area. And I imagine that all local authorities are doing that at the moment. We've had lots of things really in the welfare benefits area over the last couple of years that have just, the government says you need to do this and you need to do it next week. So it's getting those mechanisms in place quickly, but while still ensuring really that you've got records to be able to account for where money's gone, and trying as best as possible to identify the people that you're making those payments to.
Thank you. I mean, really interesting. So fantastic sort of, as you say, overview and run through what you're doing. So thank you so much for sort of joining.
You're welcome. Thank
today.
you.
And yeah, please do, do get in touch. We're always here to help. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always good to have contacts in the right areas. That's what I found.
Honestly, anything that takes the heat out of the day, it's got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so. Definitely. It's always good to have people to bounce off of.
Exactly, and I think we're all in this together one way or another, aren't we?
Definitely.
So definitely. So thank you very much, and
thank
I hope
you
enjoyed it. And yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, bye now.
Bye.